I think because they've got such good chemistry, that comes out on screen. What they're doing is not okay, but on screen, it can be really, really fun. I like The Wolf of Wall Street a lot.
I've seen that one too many times, and it's pretty funny, man. You should show your kids that one instead of WALL-E.
Well, there's more happening in The Wolf of Wall Street than there is in WALL-E, so it might play better.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Back to the Podcast. I'm Chris Lawler.
And I'm Justin Neal.
And together, we're your hosts for today's adventure through the world of entertainment. First things first, we want to give a big thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in and being a part of our incredible community. Your support means the world to us, and if you haven't already, make sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Trust us, it goes a long way in helping us bring you more of the content you love. Join the conversation over on our Facebook group, Back to the Podcast Discussion. It's the perfect place to share your thoughts, connect with fellow fans, and maybe even suggest topics for future episodes. Today's show is packed with excitement. Justin and I are gearing up to take a deep dive into the world of entertainment. On today's agenda, we're diving into recent watches and putting the spotlight on the ever-evolving world of animation. From the groundbreaking successes like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and its sequel Across the Spider-Verse to the latest installment of the TMNT Mutant Mayhem. So prepare to join us as we explore the fascinating world of animation and its remarkable strides in pushing the boundaries of creativity. Justin, my friend, how is life treating you today?
I'm good. These are my two favorite months of the year, September and October, so I'm looking forward to that. My weather is here. Other than that, I've got something to mention to you.
Oh, yeah?
So recently, my wife and I started watching Painkiller on Netflix.
Okay.
About OxyContin and Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family. Do you know anything about that story? Have you been following that all in the news?
Definitely heard of it, but not been following it at all. Who's in this and what's this one about?
So Matthew Broderick is the lead.
Okay.
He's the one who's, he's the marquee name that's carrying it. Mm-hmm. And I had actually been following this story in the news as it broke over the past couple of years about the opioid crisis in America, what's going on, and OxyContin, and how doctors were encouraged highly to prescribe patients this very addictive form of heroin, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so I knew about that, and the family that was behind that is uber rich family, the Sackler family, is the owners of Purdue Pharma. So this is something that's broke over the past couple of years, and then this is the story about that. So I kind of knew what was going on going into it. And it's well-made show. You'd totally enjoy it, that sort of thing. But what was most interesting is at the end, cut to black, directed by Peter Berg, who has come up on your radar recently heavily, yeah?
Right.
I thought that maybe it was just the pilot, like he's been setting the tone. They've done that recently, starting with David Fincher and House of Cards. They'll do the pilot and maybe the second one and then create the lookbook and then pass it on to other people who are essentially recreating the style that they've established.
And they give them like a production credit so that they at least get to still flash their name up thinking that they're still involved, but really they're probably loosely attached at that point. Yeah.
We've watched 3 episodes and they've all been directed by Peter Berg, so he might do the whole series. I haven't looked it up yet, but anyway, that was a director that's recently come up on your radar. So when it came up, I immediately thought, hey, Lawler, Peter Berg, there we go.
Great suggestion. Actually, that fits in right with what we ended up watching this week too. We ended up watching Dr. Death with Joshua Jackson and Alec Baldwin and Christian Slater about the a surgeon out of Texas, and I'm not sure, they kind of left it open-ended, but he was kind of killing these patients and doing such poor surgery and whatnot. So based on a true story and everything, obviously very different, but here we are watching some kind of dramatic, based on true events, biopic, if you will, of the week. And both of them kind of fall into that same category. And I really enjoyed mine too, especially since we grew up in that Plano, Dallas area.
Right. You're from Texas. You're a Texas boy.
Yeah.
Was that a show? Was it a miniseries or was it a movie?
Yeah, like a miniseries is what you call it. Like I said, like a biopic of the week, if you will. Like what we used to watch on ABC back in the day on TV, right?
Sure. I'm unfamiliar with it.
Yeah, this one, it came across our radar with the advertising this is not brand new. This one's been out for gosh, a year, maybe a little bit longer now.
Okay.
But it just came across and was obviously super intriguing. Of course, Joshua Jackson, I'm always been a big Mighty Duck fan. So it's always great to see what he's up to. I know there's other people out there that are big Dawson Creek fans and stuff of his, but I always go back to the Mighty Duck, the OG.
The Mighty Ducks has one of my favorite lines. And I know it's, it's naughty, but when he gets pulled over for drunk driving at the beginning, and the cop asks him,
breath, blood, or urine?
No thanks, I'm full.
even as a kid, I just thought that was such a great smart ass remark.
Yeah.
I was like, I knew you shouldn't do that.
And not Joshua Jackson.
That's Emilio Estevez. Yeah.
That was Emilio Estevez that was drunk at the beginning.
If you haven't seen The Mighty Duck, spoiler alert.
Just to clarify a little bit. So I know we just kind of went with like our agenda here, but like, what else did we watch this week? Anything fun? More uplifting than that?
No, I got nothing more fun than that.
All I did was Stranger Things season 4.
Did you finish it?
I did finish it, man.
What are your thoughts?
Have you seen all 4 seasons?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I haven't watched it since it like premiered, so I haven't rewatched it.
So I got to be honest, man. I mean, obviously, it's fun. We're getting something new, entertaining. It feels familiar, but it's still new with like this hint of nostalgia with
Well, here, let me ask you a question. Since you've just now gone through season 4, do you think it's run its course? Do you think it's petering out? Where do you think it's on its trajectory? Because nothing ever stays, a certain level.
I honestly thought season 4 was one of their best seasons. I know this is going to sound weird, and I probably have a lot more to go back and rewatch to make sure that that's as fresh as 4 is now in my mind. But the sound design was brilliant. The way that they were using sound effects to merge one scene into the next, creating a bunch of tension while keeping the story flowing was really good. There was a lot, though, to unpack in this last season. They were like trying to hit that 45-minute mark like they started out with in season 1. And then by the end of it, it was 2.5 hours. That almost should have just been your season 5 or something. But they wanted to keep it going. So we will see if they can stick the landing. They say 5 is the last season.
Yeah, I was about to say, because the ages are going to become insurmountable at a certain point.
Yeah, I know. I heard they're going to do a little bit of a time jump.
You kind of have to.
Yeah.
They're in college.
Do you think they can just jump to the 90s?
Stranger Things, grunge edition.
But I had a fun time with it, man. I mean, I think the acting is good. It's still a fun.
It's fun, yeah.
It's fun, right? It's a good, energetic thrill ride adventure, and it's exactly what you kind of want to do when you sit down to watch something. Whoever was doing editing and sound mixing on this one really needs an award for it because it was pretty amazing.
It's funny that you mentioned how the sound helps transition from like one scene to another, but also gives continuity in other ways in the way that that plays. There's a movie that does that really well for me because it's so many different storylines that they're weaving together, and that's Cloud Atlas.
Yeah, you've mentioned this one before.
The Wachowskis and Tom Twyker, who's a German director.
I think in our first episode you talked about this one.
I mentioned Cloud Atlas.
It's okay. You can mention it again. You can talk about a movie 2 times.
I fucking will. I'm going to do a deep dive. My next retrospective is, actually, I might do a retrospective on Cloud Atlas.
There you go.
I think it deserves one.
You do your thing.
It's underrated.
I never saw that one, though, but I do remember it when it came out. What were you going to say, though, about the sound in that one?
So I've read the book also, and in the book, because there's a bunch of different storylines that cross time and space. So in the book, each chapter is its own storyline. And you just stay with it till the end of that chapter, and then the next one's something different. I watched the behind the scenes where they broke down the script. I thought it was really interesting is they just broke down all the seeds into cue cards, and they literally started mixing them around so they could tell all of these stories kind of parallel progressively. And to do that and weave between all of these very different storylines and different times, places, tones, all of the stuff that goes into it, it was really impressive. And a lot of that is the sound design and how you, like a tapestry, weave it together. So that was cool. Cloud Atlas. I like that movie.
Big shout out one more time for Cloud Atlas. Well, I figured we'd dive on in. We decided the topic today would be animation. I haven't seen the new TMNT, but obviously the animation in there, it looks like they were like, hey, we can push some boundaries and not do this very standard thing. Let's try something new. Because for a while there, we were pushing right into everything had to be 3D, right? Let's get almost realistic lighting and realistic physics and stuff like that. And now they're like, it's animation. Why don't we break
Make
some
it
rules
look like
and
a drawing.
stuff? So maybe we should just look back at a couple of other movies that did that. throughout the years and stuff like that, all the way back from our childhood. So when I brought this topic up, did anything pop into your mind like right away of like animated movies that really stuck out to you when you were younger?
I think of people sitting there with the pencils and like multiple pieces of paper through each finger that they're flipping and doing. That's what I think of when I think of animation. I like animated movies just like I like any other movie. I never kind of fell in love with animation. It's one of those that I highly respect as a craft, but I think early on I knew that I wasn't going to be an animator, so it's not something that I focused on as a craft, and so I just kind of went and saw movies as they came out. And I mean, seeing something like The Lion King in the theater,
Right.
that was highly impactful, and that was animated. I would probably say that was the first animated movie that I saw in the theater that really moved me.
Wow. I'm surprised it's The Lion King and wasn't Aladdin. And the only reason I say that is because we're of the same age. And I remember Aladdin blew a lot of people away.
I don't think I saw Aladdin in the theater.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, once again, Aladdin was one of the first times where they were mixing 2D with 3D. And then, of course, that's when they won the award in Beauty and the Beast, when they did that big flowing shot.
I like Beauty and the Beast. I've always been a fan of that one.
Beauty and the Beast is a beautiful animated movie. And once again, that dancing scene where they were giving like the camera, like they were putting like a camera into a 2D space, but giving it a 3D space to film in.
And it was in all the promos.
Right.
That sweeping.
That big shot.
What would be a boom shot that sweeps around them. I do remember that.
And that was brand new.
What was the animated movie that blew your mind?
I mean, it really was Aladdin, I think. Don't get me wrong. Like, I grew up on all the Disney things and stuff, and I loved, Looney Tunes, and it was silly, it was different. But when it came to like a motion picture, dude, it was Aladdin. Like, it was beautiful, and I was really big into the voice acting side of things, because that was when they were putting out like all those promos. They were literally like showing you how they made the movie and stuff like that. And it was so cool to have like a team of animators that are almost removed from this other team that are directing. And then of course, Gilbert Gottfried coming in, being the parrot.
Cave of Wonders.
And stuff was just so memorable. That was when they were really first trying to like reach out to like celebrities for Disney movies, if you remember as well. And Robin Williams, of course,
famously,
they didn't really have big names. I mean, Little Mermaid was like their last big one right before that, if I'm getting my sequence right.
It goes Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Lion King.
And they really didn't do a lot of celebrities in those previous ones. And then they started using kind of bigger and bigger names going forward.
Getting Robin Williams was a big
win, right? And he really brought a lot of life energy to that. And then once again, when they're like flying into the cave and stuff, it was like, how did they do that? And I learned that it was because of computer animation being interjected with 2D.
I think animation works as a hybrid style really well. And actually one on my list is kind of technically a hybrid.
Yeah, which one?
If you want me to get into it.
Get into it.
I brought something to show the class.
Okay, please.
I have two show and tell things. Actually, they're animation based.
Did you make an animation thing?
No.
No, okay.
But I do have...
You had some random thing, I figured.
Copy of the Hobbit animated movie. I have a copy of that on VHS. And...
That's impressive.
The vinyl soundtrack that goes with it.
Oh my goodness. I never even knew that existed. Okay.
That one's not a hybrid. That one's kind of a pure animated movie. But I do have the 1978 Ralph Bakshi, The Lord of the Rings animated movie.
I'm not as familiar with that one.
And also the soundtrack on vinyl.
Okay, say it with me now, class.
Whoa.
Nerd.
What a nerd. No, that's great.
It's true.
No, it's great.
I've had them 25 years.
That's incredible.
They're older than that.
Our teacher introduced me to those.
Oh, okay. So the Ralph Bakshi animated one is a hybrid because there's certain scenes like Gollum in the cave at the beginning and things like that they shot on film and blended that with animation to get kind of a, interesting style. And
but isn't that the one that like ran out of money?
That's why it ends halfway through the two towers.
Yeah, exactly.
It just stops.
And like the animation kind of gets crappier as it goes too.
It's a hot mess just across the board. But there's some really interesting things about it. And so it's not one that I, recommend to people that like The Lord of the Rings. Like, you should watch this whole movie. It's like, no, actually, you probably shouldn't. But
if you like acid,
if you want to like get high and watch
I
some
highly recommend it.
weird psychedelic, late 70s.
That is some old school stuff.
I didn't discover these until middle school. It was about the time that I actually read The Hobbit, so I didn't grow up on those. Those came middle schoolish, but
Yeah, that's still you growing up on that in my, you know what I mean? Like still finding something as obscure as that. And once again, without the internet,
it was niche.
that's still a good find.
It's obscure even now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think people only know of it because of the popularity of Lord of the Rings now over the past few years, but good fucking pull, man.
I went to the archives for those.
I really don't have any of my old VHS or anything.
I got nothing.
Yeah, I got nothing cool like that.
Justin Wins show and tell.
That does take me back. The one record thing I used to have for an animated thing was Fox and the Hound. Do you remember Fox and the Hound?
Of course.
Man, that was one of my favorites when I was a kid.
I've watched all those.
I really, really enjoy that story. Oh, that ending is just so heart-wrenching and stuff like that.
We're still friends, aren't we?
There's so many layers to it, and I love that movie so much.
And that's great. We can go down that,
I just broke down.
our childhood, animated movies. But are there any like alt animations that you ever became interested in, like not mainstream animation or anything weird that maybe I don't know about? You know what I mean? Because I didn't go down that rabbit hole.
I definitely have one then. If I was thinking about bringing up Scanner Darkly. Had you ever seen Scanner Darkly?
I know it because of Richard Linklater. So I watched it because of that.
I would have a feeling that even something kind of obscure like that you had seen.
And Keanu.
Yeah, and Keanu and Woody Harrelson.
But I've known Richard Linklater since
Right.
Dazed Confused. So of course, whenever a new one comes out, I know about it.
Yeah. So really, one of the animated things that I didn't think that I was gonna like, and this is really showing how nerdy Chris is and how old I am too, is Final Fantasy Advent Children. Man, did you're not much of a gamer, so Final Fantasy you didn't really play?
I love the original on NES.
Okay.
And then I've played and beaten 7 when one of my roommates
You
had,
actually know 7.
My man Tripp had a PlayStation, and I believe I beat 7. But I remember like getting a little sideways and watching some of the cutscenes from 10. I think he would play me cutscenes from 10.
Yeah, 10
and
was
I'd never
great.
seen stuff like that.
Yeah.
In a video game, and he played it because I was like in the
Well,
right
then-
state of mind. He's like,
Yeah.
let me show you something. And I just sat there going, holy shit, you can do this in video games now? This is rad. I remember being really impressed by that.
So when I said Final Fantasy Advent Children, you kind of like shimmered. Are you thinking of the Spirits Within movie?
I was thinking of Spirits Within. I have seen that one, but I haven't seen Advent Children.
So I mean, Spirits Within still kind of pushed the envelope because once again, we were just getting into 3D animation and they were like, how realistic can we make it? So they did that. That movie's not necessarily that great, but when it comes to the animation and what they were doing at the time, it is very impressive for that. But Advent Children is actually a sequel to Final Fantasy VII, the game. I'm not into anime. It's not totally my style, but yeah, you've never heard of it, never seen it?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen that one.
I saw it in the theater. I remember like distinctively talking friends into going. We were not in a crowded theater. It did not do well. I remember, but I was like, I gotta go see what this is. It's not a good movie.
So it's niche and it's not a good movie. No wonder no one was there.
But
I have an anecdote about animation.
What?
This is probably like one of my...
stop the presses.
I haven't thought about this in forever.
Go ahead.
You're jarring some memories. That's fantastic. So
All eyes on Justin. Go.
I was at Media Play, as everyone knows, and one of my coworkers who worked in the computer software / games section, he was big into Japanese anime, and the internet was there, but not like we know it today. And so you had to have like a tap into a vein to kind of even be aware what was coming out in like Japan and how to get a hold of it. You know what I mean? It was a little more underground. If you were in that scene, you knew about it, but otherwise you wouldn't really know about it.
Yeah.
And he showed it to me, and in Japanese, it's called Mononoke Hime.
I've actually watched this movie.
Very popular anime movie, especially for its time. And so I actually saw it in Japanese, unsubtitled. It was like a bootleg Japanese copy in 1997 of Mononoke Hime. And I just had to follow what was going on. And I like that. Like, I don't even need subtitles. If it's a good story and they're speaking another language, like I'll follow along.
You got me. That one didn't do much for me but I saw the American version, obviously, so it was dubbed but it had all that hype, so I sat down and watched it. I didn't understand anything that was going on in that movie, and I don't still to this day.
Later on, I realized, like, actually, that was a huge thing to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I just kind of got tapped into it because of a coworker of mine.
Don't you just love friends like that, though, that show you cool shit like that and like just open your eyes to like a whole like different style of filmmaking or a show or something like that? Because like they know that you love film.
Yeah, animation. I saw certain things, like I remember seeing Fern Gully in the theater.
Fern Gully in the theater.
I saw a lot of stuff in the theater. I think, going back to The Lion King, actually, I would probably say The Lion King is my favorite animated movie.
Really?
And that one really stuck with me because I was old enough at that point to get the deeper meaning. And it's very Shakespearean.
Yes. Well, yes.
And I like that. It's about big themes, the loss of your father and betrayal. And, he becomes an outcast and returns to his homeland to, reclaim the rightful throne lost to him. And I saw at the time that this was a good way for them to introduce me to deeper storytelling through a kid-friendly animation. And I think that one really did something for me, and it spoke to me, and I think it really showed me what could be done, not in animation, but just in storytelling, and it was a good way to introduce me to that.
I hear my voice coming through you right now, but for a totally different movie, and that's Wall-E. I know that one's a little random.
No, it's not. I think it's Pixar's best movie.
I think it's their best movie too. I love everything, the tone, the themes. I can't believe how like little dialogue.
It's sad too.
But it's hopeful.
It depresses me though.
There's a lot of stuff going on in there. And what I love about it the most is just how there's so little of dialogue, but there's so much emotion being told. And once again, the main character is a robot that doesn't show emotion, but he does. And it's great storytelling, man. It is animation at its finest.
The problem with that movie for me is that I'm afraid they're right.
Okay.
On a philosophical level, I remember seeing it in the theater and being in awe of the storytelling because the first, 30, 45 minutes, no dialogue, nothing.
Not
for
really.
half an hour. And that's so good. So there was the part of me that was like, this is brilliant. And then by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I'm so depressed because I'm afraid that they're right. And this is where we're going to end up.
Yeah, well, maybe we see it as two different movies, man.
No, I think it's two different movies. That's what I'm saying is we're both right.
We're both right.
That's why that movie's brilliant.
Okay.
Layers, man. Layers.
And then, one of the dumb things in there is that his favorite movie is Hello, Dolly.
Hello, Dolly.
When I was a kid, that was actually one of my favorite movies.
Oh, really?
It's a fun musical, dude. Yeah, my mom introduced that to me. She's huge into Dolly Parton, so she threw that on one day, and I just was like, this is actually a fun movie. It's funny.
My sister did a high school stage production of Hello, Dolly when I was in middle school, so I've seen the stage production.
Oh, wow.
By
okay, cool.
a high school cast, but I have not seen the movie.
What?
I know what happens.
That's incredible.
The ship sinks.
You've got kids, man. You should like totally sit down and watch some old fun movies like that.
Oh, we will. Oh my God.
Singing in the Rain, stuff like that.
The next 10 years with the boys,
I bet.
we're going to watch all of these things that you and I talk about.
Have they seen Wall-E?
That's not a good kids animated movie. Listen to me. You are not a parent.
I'm not a parent.
It's not a great movie for children.
It's a kids movie.
No, it's not. It's not a kids movie. You're wrong.
But
it is an adult animated movie.
But they're going to see it as one thing, and then they're going to grow up and see it as another thing.
No, man. They get so bored.
Once again, as a kid, I would have watched that movie so easily.
You're a freak.
Why?
We are freaks. No 6-year-old will sit through Wall-E. I fucking promise you. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. Of course there are. That's why this show exists. But generally speaking, Wall-E is not for kids. It's for adults.
I'll take your word for it, man.
I'm not saying kids can't learn something or enjoy it, but man, 15 minutes of no talking.
I I think you're putting up limiting beliefs on your own children's.
That's a cute little psychological debate tactic.
But I don't know your kids at all.
But it's not going to work. You don't have children.
I don't have kids.
You don't know.
But I would definitely be showing my kids all of this stuff.
I have tried showing it to them.
I know that for a fact.
And within 10 minutes, they've moved on to something else, man.
So they're just not movie kids, man.
They're at the age group that
I loved films when I was a kid. That's all I have to say.
So do they. That just doesn't mean that they like the same things that you remember liking or what you would like now.
I guess.
You're not a parent.
It's apparent I'm not a parent, I guess.
Wit.
Well, fine. You do you, and I'll raise other people's children. I'll just find them out in the wild, and I'll just corral them in and be like, you will watch this.
Speaking of kids in the wild, it makes me think of that scene in Wolf of Wall Street, and it's Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonah Hill, and they're sitting in a bar talking. And Jonah Hill's talking about how his character is married to his first cousin and how they have kids. And Leo's like,
I don't want to get personal or anything. They're okay. No, they're not retarded or anything like that.
but if they had, we would have just taken them out into the woods and said,
And just open the door and let us say, you're free now. Run free.
Leo's face is like, oh my God, what is going on? He says, I'm just fucking with you. But I love that idea. It's like, no, if there was something wrong with them, I would just take them out into the woods.
You just put like a bucket on their head.
That's fantastic.
And just spin them around a couple of times and just take off.
Yeah, just be free.
That's great.
I've heard that Jonah improvised a lot in Wolf of Wall Street, and that he is just like an improv machine of just breaking people, doing it in the moment. I can believe that. I like it.
I love improvising and stuff like that, especially when you get into a character. It's a lot easier to come up with things that you wouldn't necessarily say, but it's easier for to think of.
Well, and especially in that type of movie where you're playing hyper realistic versions of people for comedic effect. They were on set for months and months and months. And when you're in that and the whole point is to push the envelope, you're goading each other on. There's a lot of funny stuff on the cutting room floor.
Like the big one was they're eating that sushi and he's like, no, go ahead, you eat the last one. And he did that to make Leo eat like 50 pieces of fucking like yellowtail sushi that day. And it wasn't in the script. It wasn't supposed to be that way, but he just flipped it around.
He's just messing with him.
Yeah, it's so fun. Oh man, that's funny. Well, right on. Well, I guess that's a great point right there to go ahead and wrap things up, man. We got a little lost on Wolf of Wall Street, but we talk about animation today, which is always fun. Have you guys seen the new Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse? And then, of course, the new TMNT Mutant Mayhem. And, of course, what's your favorite animated movie? Yeah. So, let's go ahead and send it off, man. Thank you, fantastic listeners, for joining us on today's exhilarating journey through the world of animation on Back to the Podcast. It's always amazing how these discussions just lead us to new insights and discoveries. Before we sign off, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Don't miss out on any more of our in-depth explorations into the world of entertainment. Now, before we wrap up, we'd love to hear from you. What are your favorite animated movies? Or perhaps you've been struck by some obscure gems that have left a lasting impression. Share them with us in the comments section below. Let's keep those brainwaves buzzing and creativity discussion going. All right, you fantastic bunch. Let's ride this animation wave together. Hit us up in the comments and let us ensure the podcast groove stays alive. Join us next time on Back to the Podcast as we continue to dive deep into the exciting world of entertainment. Until then, stay epic.